Today we have a story of a crazy entitled parent who leaves their kid's job in jeopardy. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, I just realized I hate my mom. Yesterday, I finally got a chance to listen to the audiobook Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. The reason why I chose to listen to this book might have something to do with the 2020 pandemic and how my mom is behaving right now. Several things happened as time went on. This year, I got a data entry job in an office setting. I work 40 hours a week. My mom is finally proud of me. She said, "Yep, that makes sense. You were always good with computers." I found myself hating her more than usual this year. During the summer, she brought my two uncles to stay with our family. When she talks to my uncles about me, she says, "OP is really good with computers. If you need help with computer stuff, ask them. They will always help you with computers." One time when I was leaving to catch the bus, my uncle stopped me because they accidentally deleted WhatsApp from their phones. I had to quickly reinstall and set up the app for them. While I was doing that, they were complaining about how I don't speak their native language and how communication would be a lot easier if I did. Another day, I came back from a long day of work. They asked for my help. I ignored them. I was tired from my job. I would come home later than usual to avoid them. My mom gave them detailed instructions on how to interact with me to get me to help with their computer problems. My two uncles needed to use the copy machine and didn't know what to do. My mom gave instructions. She told them to wait for me by the door. When I get to the door, use their bodies to block the entrance and tell OP that they need to help them with the printer. She even told her boyfriend if he needed help, he could just ask me at any time. Her boyfriend would always need help submitting his online homework. Another time, he needed me to help set up the Amazon Echo security cameras. Another time, the cable box wasn't working properly. Every time I entered the kitchen for food, her boyfriend and my uncles would need help. They would guilt trip me. They told me that my mom said it was okay and that it was an emergency. When my mom is home, she would pretend to care. She would let me take breaks as long as I promised to come help later. If I was really frustrated, she would offer $10 for my service. I hate coming home because of her. Edit, FAQ, you're an adult now, just move. I can't afford rent. So I definitely sympathize with OP here because I've had people in my life who, whenever I was around them, it felt like I was walking on eggshells because it felt almost like a surety that they were going to ask me to do something for them. Like it just felt like a bygone conclusion that they were going to ask me for something, or if they weren't going to ask me for something, they were going to complain because something else hadn't already been done. Sadie Lady 11 commented, "You're self-sufficient now, so cut the cord to her. You don't have to speak to her if you don't want to. That's the joy of being an independent adult." Our next story is Evil Mamabear is dead, but not before she tried to sue me for grandparents' rights. Before anyone comments it, please know ding dong the witch is dead. This woman may have been rotten to the core, but she was still my mother, and I'd like to just move on and forget now that she's passed away. I've got too much else to worry about in life than dealing with memories of Evil Mamabear anyway. Also, EMB is the acronym for Evil Mamabear, just in case any new readers were wondering. To start things off, not too long after Evil Mamabear finally moved away, my girlfriend suddenly gave me an ultimatum. And that was that I seriously get therapy or she might leave me. She held off on that until after Evil Mamabear left, and insisted that I couldn't drag my feet anymore. She said I needed to put an end to the obsession I had with getting back at my insane narcissist mother for trying to ruin my childhood. I finally agreed to the therapy. It was good at first. I even had the therapist laughing at some of my stories, and they even admitted it would have been hard for them not to do the same things to Evil Mamabear were they in my shoes. I was given a mostly clean bill of mental health after a while. Despite the issue with Evil Mamabear's flying monkey nosy Nancy, things should have been fine, till my girlfriend suddenly told me she was pregnant. We're not sure how it happened. I used protection, but we did have one rip. We thought it would be fine because she was on the pill. I was in a complete panic at first, and she walked out on me for a while because of it, but I apologized and resolved to become a great parent. I made sure she knew I was 100% committed to being a father and a husband if she was willing. We had a pretty short engagement and got married in a courthouse. Neither of us felt like a big wedding, and the honeymoon was postponed due to her pregnancy and our respective careers. When we eventually learned the gender of our unborn child through ultrasound, we found out we were having a girl. I was elated. My wife was elated, but Evil Mamabear was stalking the family social media, and a few of my relatives posted about my upcoming daughter. Suddenly, my lawyer got a request from Evil Mamabear asking that I drop the restraining order. Although the narcissistic tearjerker of a letter Evil Mamabear wrote and sent was pretty cringy, I wasn't allowed to see the letter at the time, because it would be a breach of the restraining order. My lawyer could only give me a very vague summary, but after Evil Mamabear died, the restraining order was null and void, so I could finally view it, and I'll write it out for you all. Evil Mamabear's letter said, "To my only son OP, I know we've had our differences, but for the sake of my future granddaughter, please lift the restraining order. I miss having family so very much, and I couldn't imagine never being in my new baby's life. She's not even born yet and I already want to take her into my arms and just never share her with anyone. I just know she'll be a perfect, beautiful little girl because she has my genes in her. Please let me see her. She'll never grow up right if I'm not there for my baby. And if I'm not allowed to see her, I just know I'd never be able to live. I know you'll do the right thing. You have to, because I am the matriarch and you won't keep me away. I've already given up on your sister. She married a man I could never see as my son-in-law and refused to see reason. But you have redeemed yourself by marrying a beautiful white woman and giving me the granddaughter I always wanted. I just know my baby will be perfect. Love and kisses, Evil Mamabear." So that's what she wrote. Creepy, unhinged, and she repeatedly referred to my daughter as my baby, like she was completely forgetting the baby was not hers. My lawyer asked me how we should respond to her request about the restraining order. I told him he already knew exactly what I would say, so to go ahead and just say it. And he did with much enthusiasm. But that incident sent my stress about Evil Mamabear right back up, and basically ruined months of progress with my therapist. Evil Mamabear had a weird obsession with girls related to her and hates boys in general, and now that my wife and I were having a daughter, she had zeroed in on us with a telescope. Or maybe a sniper rifle. She wouldn't even acknowledge her grandson, my nephew, but the second she found out that me, the son she always treated like absolute garbage, was having a daughter with my wife, well, her baby rabies kicked into mega overdrive. When I didn't lift the restraining order, Evil Mamabear resorted to calling me directly at work from the company landline. She was crying and begging me to lift the restraining order because she wanted to know her future granddaughter. I told her my unborn daughter was not her grandchild. I had disowned her as a mother, just like my sister had, and my daughter will never know her as a grandmother. She doesn't deserve it, not after what she's done. She started to screech at me that I could not do this to her, and that I was denying her rights as a grandmother and matriarch. I told her she was insane to think she was a matriarch and then hung up, but she called right back twice. She possibly didn't know, but all calls on the company landline are recorded, so I had the recordings and the call log sent to my lawyer and told him to release the hounds. Evil Mamabear was arrested for violating the restraining order. This time I was happy to get her arrested because she no longer lives around here. I held back before the other time she violated the restraining order because any more arrests could have potentially delayed her moving away, but that wasn't the case anymore. Evil Mamabear got arrested and somehow actually spent some time in jail, just for those phone calls violating the restraining order. I half expected her to get off lightly with her feeble old lady routine or something, but dang, the law don't mess around in Texas. My daughter was born a few months later. She's very healthy and growing well. My wife doesn't want me posting any key details about her, and I'm respecting that. Also, for those who kept telling me to sell my house before in the comments of my previous posts, I still won't. This is a great house and was my dad's house. I couldn't bear to part with it. Not to mention I refused to be any farther away from the company I inherited from my dad. As for Evil Mamabear, well, she got a lawyer and filed a grandparents' rights lawsuit against me as soon as she was out of jail. She actually said that I was going to be a horrible parent to a little girl and I couldn't be trusted without her guidance. And though we never actually got direct confirmation if it was her, we know it had to be Evil Mamabear who repeatedly called CPS on us. CPS came to see us with an attitude like they were expecting the worst, but they were impressed by my house and the nursery, and they determined everything said was false. But they still showed up again after getting more anonymous reports. They investigated again, found nothing again, complimented my home again. They couldn't tell me it was Evil Mamabear. but I know that it was her that made the false reports. Who else would it be? CPS ended up knocking one more time, but by the third time, they were just going through the motions because they had to follow up. We were completely cooperative. My daughter was healthy. The house was immaculate. There was literally nothing that CPS would consider a problem. Evil Mamabear's case for grandparents' rights was easily denied. The judge took one look at all the details of her prior history and said she had no case, not only because of my restraining order against her, but also because she had no prior relationship with my daughter. Plus, there was also the fact that Evil Mamabear was openly a misandrist and was a racist towards my brother-in-law, and the record of when my lawyer had Evil Mamabear sign a contract to keep her away from my sister. Said contract also prevented any grandparents' rights to any of my sister's current and future children. And then there was the false reports to CPS, which Evil Mamabear was most likely the culprit of doing. On top of that, I had a crap ton of details on what Evil Mamabear had done to me over the course of my life, and how I keep gnomes pretty much everywhere because she's so afraid of them she won't come near. There was so much evidence in detail we had against Evil Mamabear that any sane judge would realize in an instant Evil Mamabear was not grandma material. That should have been it, but Evil Mamabear filed an appeal. It was denied, so she tried to file another appeal on the basis of Texas law instead of my state's law. Said appeal was also denied because I and my family are not residents of Texas, nor do we ever plan to be. Whatever lawyer Evil Mamabear had found to help her was likely just using her for a paycheck, because even an idiot could see the case was doomed to fail from the start when a restraining order was involved. So, what does Evil Mamabear decide it's a good idea to do? She called me again, this time to spit the worst kind of venom she could at me. She sounded very intoxicated, and the stuff she was accusing me of, well, it was very clear she'd completely lost touch with reality. She was accusing me of downright heinous things that never happened. She claimed I beat her all the time and that I'll likely beat my own wife and children too. She said I stole money from her and my sister, claimed I was somehow stalking her in Texas, and she even accused me of SA towards her, which I will not go into detail about. But let's just say the very thought of the things she was believing in her own head made me want to vomit. She claimed I was a monster and she was terrified of me. If that were true, I doubt she'd have called me like that. Making me the bad guy in her head must have been one of the only ways she had left to mentally function. But we found out later she was also on very hard drugs, so she was probably badly both intoxicated and inebriated when she called me. You can bet I had my lawyer sick Texas police on her again. We notified APS too, since Evil Mamabear seemed in a state that was dangerous to herself and others, but she wasn't at her home in Texas. Police had no idea where she was. They couldn't find her anywhere. She'd gone off the grid. I was worried she was hiding somewhere nearby and stalking us. Knowing Evil Mamabear, she was possibly prepared to do something absolutely insane. So I sent my wife and daughter to her parents' house, and my sister and brother-in-law went to his parents' house for a while. We were expecting the worst, till a few weeks later, someone dumped off Evil Mamabear in front of a hospital nowhere near us. She had OD'd badly on a cocktail of drugs and alcohol. She was brought in for emergency treatment, but there was no saving her. She was gone before they could do much of anything. We found out her liver was already failing, and her body was rather thin from heavy drinking and malnutrition, which likely contributed to her mental instability. But there was a cocktail of hard drugs in her system too. I think she was just ready to go. As if for some final freak you, Evil Mamabear's will actually demanded that I, as the elder of her two children, be the one to handle her funeral. She knew I would hate doing that, but I did it just so my sister wouldn't have to. And no, Evil Mamabear had no life insurance, though I'm not sure it would have paid out under the circumstances if she did. Not very many relatives showed up for the funeral, not even the flying monkey Nosy Nancy, even though my lawyer sent her the funeral info. But just to be petty, I had the funeral in my backyard, with gnomes all around Evil Mamabear's urn. Evil Mamabear had no grave prepared either, and neither my sister or I wanted to look for one for her. We certainly didn't want her buried near our dad, so we mutually decided Evil Mamabear's urn would go to my sister to do what she wanted with it. Evil Mamabear's will, as completely expected, was vaguely worded and gave everything she had to my sister, Aside from the money allotted for her funeral, not that I wanted anything from her, the will was years old. Evil Mamabear hadn't bothered to update it since before my sister met her husband. But it also meant my sister not only inherited Evil Mamabear's money, but also her new house in Texas. We went to see it, and it was a brand new double-wide manufactured home. Not bad as a retirement house, and no surprise, Evil Mamabear had it well furnished. There was some debate on what to do with the house, sell the property, rent it out, or live in it. It was a hard choice for my sister since it was a nice house, but ultimately she and her husband decided to sell it. They didn't want to move that far away, and they didn't want to manage the property long distance as landlords either. So they sold it, but not before secretly burying Evil Mamabear's urn somewhere on the property, which spans a couple dozen acres. I guess it's fitting her remains stayed on her old family land. Let's hope nobody comes along with a metal detector. But my sister, in one last act of glorious pettiness, put a small gnome toy in the urn with Evil Mamabear's ashes before burial. I just about fell over, busting a gut when she told me she did that. For my sister, even after taxes, the money from the sale and the money she'd inherited from Evil Mamabear was more than enough for her and her husband to buy a house locally. At one time, they called me saying they were looking at a house in an HOA. I told them, heck no, it's not a good idea. I've seen enough horror stories about HOAs on Reddit and warned sis and brother-in-law to steer clear of them, and they listened. They settled on a nice 4-bedroom house that was built in the 80s and remodeled a few years prior. They're very comfortable there, but they did have to replace the water heater. I came in to help as I'd done it before with a friend. Other than that, they've had no problem with the house other than baby-proofing it for my nephew. There ended up being a few small loose ends, like Evil Mamabear owing some minor credit debt, inheritance taxes, and Evil Mamabear's car was missing. It had been stolen around the time she died and was eventually found wrecked near the border to Mexico with a lot of parts stolen off of it. None of us would have wanted that car anyway. So off to the scrapyard it went. Pretty much all of Evil Mamabear's possessions were sold with the house. None of us wanted any of it, and selling the house fully furnished added to its appeal. If there's anything I'd have to begrudgingly admit about my mother, it's that she had good taste in furniture and how to arrange it. Well, she can arrange the devil's furniture now. I'm still in therapy and probably will be for a while, but my marriage is going well, and I'm happy. So I guess this completely ends everything with Evil Mamabear. She's dead and there's no more need to speak of her. So now, finally and assuredly, this is likely my last post about her. Unless something she's done comes back to bite us from beyond the grave. Thanks everyone for reading. I know it was a lot. Sadly, to me, it kind of sounds like an outcome of somebody that is just so destructive in their life. Not only did their choices affect their health ultimately in their life, but the relationships they had with everybody around them. Honestly, I wonder how much of their actions and what they did to their own kids is related to the stuff that they were putting in their body. Like, I don't think it's a crazy thing to assume that she was probably using pretty much most or all of the time that she was acting out like this. If she wasn't, how different may it have all been? Just an old baby boomer commented, "I remember the gnomes, nice touch, bravo. I guess I can say condolences from one survivor to another. I empathize. I have my own Addams Family sense of funny, if that's acceptable." Our next story is, used to hate my mother, maybe still do, wish she'd go away. My 31, mother 61, is definitely disorganized attachment, requires regular reports or else worries, is mild-mannered most of the time but will critique certain aspects of my life out of the blue that just bring a bigger rift between us, especially in light of my overlapping disabilities. Her ideas of cleanliness, diet, spending, activity level, posture, and acne when I was younger and doing worse. Most recently, she was scolding my spending habits while she was helping me with rent. She cited 5 objects as examples. 4 were gifts from in-laws, which I would have told her about. 1 was something I bought almost 10 years ago now. She had to bring this up for her mental health. It put me right back to being a kid. It's an exhausting cycle with her, so I stood up to her, pointed out the cognitive dissonance and how it strains our relationship. She finally mentioned maybe getting counseling and has since been attending some online classes for highly sensitive persons, HSP, and admitted she maybe doesn't really know me and apologizing for it. Thanked me for my candor, sees it as a growth opportunity. Which, cool. Great, different outcome, but my taste for our reconnection has soured, and her apologies come off as groveling as she doesn't have to feel bad. I feel happier when I forget she exists, going about my day. Now she's going on yet another trip somewhere, so whatever day you don't work in the next 4, let's set an alarm as it's important to connect with you to fill up my heart before I leave. Makes me feel more settled. It irks me that it's not a request. She has an elder sister whose health has taken a turn for the worst, but why do I have to be her energy source for her vampirism? Part of me is still the kid who wants her love, but she didn't know that kid either, or care about their needs, just if she appeared to be a good mother to others. What I thought didn't matter. Dunno, it would be a relief if she died. I'd be sad, sure, but then the cycle would be done and over. It sounds to me like OP more than anything just needs to find a way to deconnect from their mom. I mean, if you get to the point where you go, I don't know, it would just be a relief if she was unalive, I feel like that's the point where you have to be at least a little bit more introspective and realize, okay, maybe it would be better to reframe this in, it would be a relief if she just wasn't in my life. Like, she doesn't have to be dead for that to happen. Our next story is, Mom might cost me my job. To begin, this is currently an ongoing issue. I am 28-year-old male and I work in animation. I'm an SFX supervisor and cleanup artist. On occasion, I get to deal with known voice actors, some of which are very famous, and it is my dream job. I love my job and have been in the industry going on 4 years, starting in doing contract work for the company I now work for. Well, about 6 months ago, my mom, who owns a business, the only employees being her and my grandmother, began to inform me that a friend of hers has a daughter whom is a fan of the show I work on, and made it abundantly clear she wants me to get signatures from both the staff and voice actors so she can invite her friend to her business and gift the daughter this card on top of me having to purchase a gift to go with it. For context, I'm under the impression that the daughter of the other woman is unaware of the proceedings, and the other woman had not requested. I've never met either of them. This is strictly my mother feeling entitled to signatures and a service that my industry has etiquette and channels to do, but not in the fashion she desired, leading to my current predicament. For those who are unaware, asking for signatures from an individual is not an issue out in public or in a non-work environment, even sometimes in a work environment. This changes when the signatures that are being demanded by an outside force and the signatures in question belong to behind-the-scenes staff. Animators, creative directors, the CEO, audio engineers, storyboard artists, etc., and the voice talent, who are often sourced from a secondary company that has its own contracts. My contract has a few points that roughly translate to, don't harass the celebrities for autographs. The solicitation of autographs and sales of autographs outside the company will lead to immediate termination. And if you are to request an autograph, it needs to be for you or a direct family member, and to go through the proper channels to not cause an issue with the talent agency the celebrity belongs to. So, into the story, my mother got this idea in her head to have me get this girl a sketchbook with a series of signatures of people who work on the show. Then I was to have sent it to her store so she could give it to this girl. I informed her multiple times that not only could I not get the signatures, but I was fairly certain there was contractual reasons I couldn't ask. 6 months of being hounded on the matter, and I break down and jump the gun and ask the boss. The boss got back to me on the 28th of the last month, November, and said they would sign off on it with 2 changes to my mom's plan being made. The item that is signed is a Christmas card, not a sketchbook. The card is sent to the girl's house and not used in a public display in a form of endorsement. I agreed, thinking it would be hard to change my mother's mind if this was indeed to be for a fan, and went about telling my boss, company CEO, creative lead, and one of the nicest people I have ever met, I had already ordered the sketchbook, and sought permission to hand the card and the book to the girl, which the boss said it wouldn't be a problem. We just gotta let the talent agency and our parent studio know what's going on. It should be easy. So on the 3rd of this month, December, the book arrived and the studio had turned this into a mini project that they were very excited for, and even sought out the voice actors who signed and left personalized messages. And everyone was excited to not only send the card, but also to hear how excited we made a fan. I called my mom and told her that the team had a few more signatures to get, and the book arrived. Well, think of the response that you would expect. Okay, you got it? It is wrong. I was immediately cursed out because the purpose of ordering the book was that it would have the signatures in it, and that we, my team and I, are all complete idiots in making her look like a jerk, which I told her then I should just cancel the project, because this seems like it's more about her ego than to do something for a fan. This made the arguing worse. Small aside again about my mother is when she gets mad, explanations do not exist, and whatever you say, it's either not going to be heard or is a lie despite the evidence. So no matter how much I try to explain the change in plans or the conditions, this was not going to work. I get in contact with the individual that made this their personal job to oversee this go smoothly and told him about the displeasure my mother had and how we handled the issue. While I was still heated after having to endure a raging Karen that had done nothing to get this project off the ground outside of making promises to her friend before I even agreed. This started a chain reaction at work of people not only not wanting to work on the project, but actively requesting the removal of their names from the card. At this time, the boss had left work to go on a month-long sabbatical to deal with the stress they were under, and in my opinion, the disorganization of the studio due to this led us to where we are now. Our parent studio had launched an investigation into the project from what I could understand, second and third-hand individuals. On the 10th December, I was informed I was to talk to HR about the incident. And as a relatively young company and with our acting CEO being inexperienced in the role, led to possibly the most disorganized HR meeting I have ever dealt with, leading to no real idea what I was in trouble for, but I might lose my job over it. Luckily, the next day, under preview of a lawyer and HR representatives from our more experienced parent company, I was informed I was being investigated for running a smuggling ring. I was told this was the closest term that could be assigned to the crime, and as I'm writing this, I'm sitting on a 1-week unpaid administrative leave while they're looking into the incident and verifying my account of events and mountain of screenshots and evidence explaining my side of the story. I ask you once again to think how a parent would respond to their child nearly losing their job to do something for them, or even potentially losing their dream job. If you were paying attention, you would know how my mother had acted, immediately claiming I never worked for the company, that she is the victim and she has never been more embarrassed, proceeding to send me photos of the message she sent to the girl's mother, explaining how she couldn't make it happen, and she is the one who was embarrassed, outraged, and that once again we, this time the entire company, are all idiots. In the message, the girl is only mentioned once, while her embarrassment, pride, and ego were mentioned no less than 6 times. But we're not done. My grandmother was dragged into the drama both on my mother's and my part. On my part, because I moved in with my grandmother to make sure she's taken care of while our health is largely unstable. She's currently in very stable and good health, which led to me bringing up that I do not desire to head over to my mother's on Christmas to do what we call the front yard exchange of food. She owns 10 dogs in a single floor slab house and they will not let me or my brother in. My mother, upon hearing this, called me and made it very obvious that she feels not only did she do nothing wrong, but I, facing possible termination for my dream job, losing a week's pay due to being put on administrative leave, having been yelled at for the inability to do this task I told her was not something I could do, and now it escalating into an internal family feud. I am still uncertain of my future in the animation industry. I am to the point that screaming into the void feels like a legitimate option for answers. The only thing I know is if I lose my job because of my mother's insistence that I bend to her every demand and desire where it's costing me my job, that I might just vanish from her life. We had an argument like this before, and I left the family. I'm not proud to say it, but my mother missed 12 years of my life. I can see to it I'm far enough away that she can miss the rest. I wrote this while tired and angry, so I apologize about the grammar and spelling. I'm unsure if I should or can upload her reaction to me bringing up the acting CEO and my direct supervisors. I add here the rough explanation I was given on the smuggling ring defined by the HR reps from the patent company. The act of collecting signatures, company property, and/or memorabilia, discarded or otherwise, to sell to any individual or circumnavigating established procedures to give a non-company individual an unfair advantage, service, or information that, while not directly harmful to the company and its procedures, for personal gain. Yeah, it's definitely time to stop doing her favors. It's time to really stop putting any stock into whatever she's trying to force you to do. And I think it should be especially clear for OP if they're more than willing to go and try to drag OP's grandmother into this, who, from the sounds of it, doesn't need that extra stress from something that's so nonsensical and unrelated to them. Like, all around, OP's mom is just not worth even, talking to. Magdavis commented, "I think you should consider her hostile to you and react accordingly. People who care about you don't react to 'that could get me fired' by insisting you do it anyway. You also need to accept your responsibility in this. You told her you would get fired, and then you agreed to do it anyway. I understand, it's not easy to say no, but you knew you were breaching your contract. I'd say to consider this a warning of what will happen if you continue to give in to her." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy entitled parent story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.